All right, so tonight we're going to tie a new predator fly that I've been working on kind of all summer. Kind of started on a trip to Canada with my boys. Pike fishing, I had been tying a lot of really cool predator flies like Bufords and Game Changers and Popovich style flies. But of course, up in Canada, there's a lot of small pike, and my boys were having a good time, and we were tearing up a lot of those fancy flies. So we wanted to tie something durable, and that didn't take too long to tie, and then we could tie a bunch of colors up. So we kind of came up with this pattern in the cabin, and I had some bird fur along on that trip because they come in a lot of cool colors, and it's not too expensive. We sell the bird fur for $12 a pack. Comes in a ton of colors, so you can create a lot of variations of color. But I've always used saw bird fur. I always bought the cool colors when they came in, but it mostly just hangs on my wall because I didn't really know how to use it. So the back of these tails profile perfectly with the bird fur, and the reason for that is this section of the bird fur here is really the area that has this profile section. There's a bunch of really cool micro marabou pieces when you buy a bird fur. There's actually a bunch of schlappen, which on this one I pulled a lot of them out, but back here you'll get a bunch of schlappen pieces. But this section here, what I found is really the best tailing section. So when you pull those pieces off, I pulled one out here earlier, so they look like this. And what's really cool about these is you cut them off, the thick part of the stem, cut that off, like the after shaft section there. And then you got this cool section of this awesome section of marabou here. And then you have these wispy parts. And then you actually have the hackle fiber itself. So you end up with kind of three profiles on each section. So as you wrap that around as a hackle, you get the marabou section, then you get the wispy ends, and then you actually get the tail, the hackle section itself out the back. So when you stack those on top of each other, it profiles really neat and gives you a very different look from using craft fur or marabou in that section. So we're going to go over that in the first part of this video. Second part, we'll finish off the fly. For this fly, on the front part, I'm using a 3-inch EP craft fur brush. You can use whatever you want up there. I'm using Fireline to connect the hook to the shank. The shank is a 25 millimeter Waddington shank. Some of these flies, I got a few pieces of tinsel. And I have squatchy barbells on the front of all these flies. And this is a Gamakatsu 3/0 hook. Some of these I've been tying with predator hook, 4/0 predator hooks from Arex. These ones are on our new NU saltwater 305 hooks. So we've been tying some of these same style flies for backcountry snook flies and baby tarpon flies, stuff like that. So we'll do first little section on this tail and how to use the bird fur. Second part will be to finish off the pike fly. Great, inexpensive, easy to tie pike fly that's super effective. We even were throwing these on quarter lane length this spring for bass, throwing a Kyoto weight on the front. So the Kyoto weight's a free slinging tungsten weight. We tie it onto the tippet section, throwing these on like a 9 weight. And then we would throw it out there. The Kyoto weight would obviously drop faster than the fly because it's tungsten. And then the fly would just flutter down towards that Kyoto weight, and we caught a ton of smallmouth doing that. So just a bunch of different stuff you can do with this, and hope you enjoy the video. We'll get started tying it. All right, so we're gonna tie in these pieces of bird fur. So the bird fur pieces, like I said earlier, got kind of like the hackle piece, these little wispy fibers, and then some marabou, and then the stem, and we don't want it to be too thick, and we don't want this to be brittle when we wrap it forward. So cut off the super thick part of the stem. And then I'm using a Waddington shank here. That way, when we go to attach this to the main hook, we can ensure that it rides the way we want it to ride. So the first one, we'll just wrap kind of near the back. And with each feather we add on, we're going to go progressively towards the front so we get even more of a taper out of this bird fur. And we don't want any, try to not let any fibers get trapped. It doesn't matter too much. At the end here, we'll tie it all back. And then kind of the trick here is you want all these ends to be going out the back, and however long we leave this part is kind of how long our tail ends up looking. So I think that's about how long we want this tail. This one is going to be a pike fly, so we want the tail to be decently long, but we don't want it to foul, so not too long. All right, and I'll just push all those marabou fibers to the back. And then we got this kind of longer hackle piece here on top going backwards. We got these fluff of marabou, and then we got these wispy ends. And then we're just going to do that 4 more times. So we have, we picked 4 of these pieces that are all kind of the same. So we're going to do 3 more. There we go, that's 4. So the only other thing I do, and I would probably just recommend doing this, is I just take 2 pieces of lateral flash. So whatever color flash you want in your fly, this is a great spot to put it in, because the next step we're going to cover with craft fur. So it will, and this way, if you put the flash in here, it definitely won't foul as easily. I just tie 2 strands in the middle there. Try to get them kind of off to the side, on the top-ish, off to the side, 2 on each side. So good thing about putting them in, if you get into a situation and you feel like it's too much flash, it's super easy to cut it out. Way easier to cut it out than try to add flash back in on the fly. So whip finish. All right, so that's the back section of this fly, and that's really the bird fur section. You can just see it has a lot more marabou. It has way more taper, or has a lot more movement. It has way more taper than marabou is what I was trying to say. These wispy fibers give it like a totally different taper and look and some extra movement. Just put some Raid Zap on that head. We should be good to go here. So that's kind of how this would profile. Again, this is on a 25 millimeter shank. And it's just going to have way more movement and has a bigger profile actually than a lot of other options. So something different to try, using bird fur, that I thought maybe not everybody's been trying. So that's the tail, and now we'll attach this to the head. We tied this back bird fur section. Now we're going to attach it to the front part of this fly. So I tied this on a 25mm Waddington shank. The reason I did that is so that when I put the wire, in my case I just use fire wire because it's just cheaper. So this is 30-pound fire wire. Again, I'm using this on a pike trip. It's going to get eaten up quick probably. So I don't want to spend tons of money tying these things. So I used a Waddington shank. That way I can basically put a loop through the fly, through the shank, eye of the shank, and ensure that it will ride perfectly right side up. Because again, I put all these wispy hackle ends up on top, so I want that to profile like that once the fly is finished. So I'm just going to put a bead to make sure the wire doesn't get kinked around the fly. You can use basically any kind of bead. These are just some new ones that KK gave me from NFC, but it really, for this part, isn't a huge deal what kind you use. Everybody ties in their wire differently, but the main thing here is to keep those two pieces of firewire or wire or whatever you're using perfectly straight on the top of the hook. That way this whole thing just stays perfectly straight and still allows for plenty of movement. So also, once the firewire gets fished a little bit, obviously it gets softer than regular wire, so you get more movement out of this. The fish isn't grabbing on. There's no hook out the back on the shank, so I don't get too particular on how I tie that in. I just tie it in pretty good, and then I just put some Raid Zap on it for some extra insurance, but I've never had one pull out. Probably the Raid Zap's completely unnecessary. But that's what I do. Okay, so then we've got our squatchy barbells on the front. These is an orange color barbell that we make with the Fly Project. So you can check those out. We got those on House of Fly in some really cool colors, actually. And what I'm going to be putting on here is a 3-inch craft fur brush. This one is in black and orange. And of course, these are pike flies, which are fun to tie. So you can just tie them in basically any color and the pike eat them. So I'm sure if you're a big predatory fisherman, you have your favorite colors or whatever, but in my experience, as long as it's a predatory fish color, I don't know how much it matters when the pike are really eating. So we're just going to wrap this up the front. What I found to be the easiest way to do these brushes is to just wrap it, pull the top fibers back as you go, and then just brush it out. There's no perfect way to do this. Probably not the musky guys, but definitely for most of the pike fishing and smallmouth and largemouth that we've used this fly for, it's on the larger side. Don't use your brand new scissors for that, or they'll be dull. And then basically just get like an automotive detailing brush or something like it if you have a wire brush that you use. I like these ones because it seems to get all the fibers out really easily. And you can use this one on a lot of different materials. Pretty sure we have these on the site from, I think they're from Hairline. All right. Once you have that all tied down in the front, you can just kind of clean up the head a little bit. And then just put an easy whip finish on it. It's a predator fly, so I would recommend if you have some kind of a quick epoxy, like a Raid Zap or Moon or whatever you got, that you definitely use it on this one. All right, and that's it. That's the finished fly. Has a lot of movement, gets eaten really good. Like I said, I went over some of the ways that we've been rigging it. All right, hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll have some more fly tying content out soon. And you can check us out at houseoffly.us.